Good morning, Doctor. Welcome back.
Good morning, Venkatesh. Good to be back.
Great, great. So we are today's session is play to your strengths. This is part of a sort of series we are going to do now on positive wellness, which is action-oriented wellness. So every topic we will pick will have a specific action that we can take to improve our wellness. Playing to strengths is an important point of reducing our stress and increasing our positivity. And that's the reason it's part of this series, right? So over to you, Doctor.
Okay. Thanks again, Venkatesh.
Yeah.
No, today's topic may sound a little odd to many people. Yeah. It's a little idiomatic expression of maximizing your inputs and so forth. But somebody will say, what is this playing to strengths? I am always playing to my strengths. Okay. Or you'll say, how do I know what is my strength? Etc.
Right.
etc. So questions which are not easily answered by many people, including scholars and scientists. But here it is. It's an idiom, and the idiom plays without our knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah.
that it makes you give your best and increase it. So that's why we say play to your strength. Now you can play to anybody's strength, or you can play to your weakness also, which we do many times. It sounds paradoxical. It may sound paradoxical. Many of us keep playing to our weakness, and then complain.
Right.
So let us see what exactly that is. Yeah.
Right.
So here it is again, once again, play to your strengths. Play to your strength. Okay. Next slide, please.
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of like this. Then the picture seems to suggest play to your strengths is a choice. You're turning that button on, and
Right.
it is actually a choice. And we all think, like you just said, it's a default. It's quite often not, right? The way
Right.
it's an active choice to play to your strengths. Yes, Tom.
Right. Right. So here is one example of playing to strengths. Jennifer Lopez is one of the highest paying Hollywood actresses.
Right.
So was supposed to be rather, I don't know whether she's around. He's supposed to be always succeeding in whatever she would do.
Right.
But then lo and behold, she herself had some weaknesses.
Right.
As they say, every crocodile has a soft belly. Yeah.
Right.
So the crocodile may appear terribly strong, but then its underbelly is pretty soft, and it's its weakness.
Correct.
Achilles' heel, for example.
Correct.
Achilles is a great guy, strong and whatnot, but then his strength lay only in his heel.
Correct.
And that if the heel is damaged, he is gone.
Correct.
So everybody, however strong you are, everybody has a point of weakness.
Correct.
Yeah. And that weakness has to be understood and corrected.
Right.
So see, Jennifer Lopez said, don't push your weaknesses. Many of us tend to do that. Many of us tend to spend our energy on correcting weaknesses and then not being happy. I'm trying hard, but my weakness doesn't go, and therefore I'm getting into inferiority complex and blah blah. So you have to recognize your strengths. How to recognize your strength? Any comment, Vinko?
No, absolutely. I think, and using Jennifer Lopez's example, she originally had a great strength in singing. She was a singer before she became an actress, right? And actually, it was the fact that she had built up a persona. She was already very used to having stage presence and having all of what came with being a big pop musician, that she was able to leverage and use in the choice of roles and her acting career. So it's a very good example, and she has actually lived what you just talked about.
Yeah. Right. So this is her quote, and true to your Wikipedia and all that, this quote became very famous, and it remains famous. And this you can remove Jennifer Lopez's name and then put somebody else's name. The biggest, strongest people on earth have their own weaknesses. You'll see. Now here you see a picture of two famous actresses. Supposed to be beauty queens, etc., etc. And here is, of course, you don't have to know the name. Hema Malini is too well known, and
Vaijayanti Mala Bali is also very well known from our time.
Vaijayanti Mala, yeah, but she is now past her prime, so she may not be that much as Hema
the youngsters or the younger generation may not know.
Yeah, generation wouldn't know. Yeah. So the same thing applies to them. Now, why am I showing this picture here? This Vaijayanti Mala Bali, and in those days when I was a member of the Sursingar Samsad,
Right.
and we had to go and then fetch the artist. You had to go to the artist home and fetch that person.
Correct.
And Jayantimala would not stir out of the house till her money is paid in full in advance. In Marine Drive, she had that big place, and she wouldn't really do anything beyond whatever her monetary considerations were. And there is nothing wrong in that. Today's artists do that. You and I do that. You and I always act only to our strengths. And our strength is our acting ability, and our weakness is not being able to sort of give a little bit of free kind of a thing. So she was very businesslike. And her strength is they both of them knew that their beauty has a tremendous brand value, and they will leverage it to the fullest.
Actually, both of them specifically also can be called used to a great, to your point, as South Indians. Both of them are South Indians, right? And both of them made it very big in Bollywood, in the North. And I think that was, to a great extent, the reason why you chose this slide is both of them use their dancing ability to distinguish themselves. Both at the beginning of their career. So apart from beauty, and the reason both of them have remained relevant for a long period of time is both of them are classically trained dancers. And they were able to use that to distinguish themselves, and they use that strength both in their prime, but even past their prime, they maintained their relevance. For example, you interacted with her at Sursingar because of her dance, not just because of her acting capability. And both of them actually made very good use of their dance long after their prime. So that's a very good example of their strength. Otherwise, they could have sort of, said, I don't know, they don't know Hindi, or they were not well known. That was sort of a weakness, but they played up their dancing capability to the point where some of the biggest choreographers in Bollywood actually drew inspiration and actually learned from Vaijayanti Mala Bali and took it forward.
Yeah. So actually, it is also said that Vaijayanti Mala, would insist on the cameraman playing her image in a particular angle.
Correct.
If that is not done, she would lose her temper. Because she thought, and probably rightly so, that certain angles are the best suited for her brand equity. So that is a strength. So she would play on that strength and leverage the beauty and commercialize it and monetize it and so forth. Next slide, please. Now, these examples are many in all walks of life. For example, here is a guy, a tennis guy, serving the typical tennis serve from, to toss the ball up, and then as it comes down, hit hard, You can't just hit the ball before it is tossed. And you can go wrong in tossing and not playing, So many things can happen. So these points are kept in mind while training. And players are made to be aware of it by themselves. They didn't have to be told, so forth. So this particular picture, he's throwing the ball up and then hitting it. It has literally 100 motions within that, and all of them have to be executed perfectly. Otherwise, your tennis will be gone. You'll be double faulted, or you will be you'll make just a stupid hit of the ball. So like that. The next slide, please.
Yeah. No, so I think an important point here on serving is to your point on playing to your strength. Once players have mastered this ability to serve, right? One of the most important things that the guy who's serving has is that he can set the way the first bit of play happens. And typically that is used, and that's why it is difficult to break a service, right? People normally keep serve. It's more difficult to break someone's serve. And that's a very good example of your point, which is that he then serves to that part of the court that suits him. And in that way, serving is a very good example of playing to your strengths. You can set the field in a manner, or you can set the play when you're serving. And that, in a way, is what we can all do in our lives, right? We can choose where to place the ball the first time. Not always, but we have enough opportunities to serve as well.
Yeah, because the forehand is always stronger than the backhand. So
Yeah,
many
and for some
people,
players, it may not be, right? Sometimes for a competitor, you serve
yeah,
to his weakness. You
have
serve
to
to his
practice.
weakness or to your strength.
Right, right. Good. Next
Doctor,
slide,
just
please.
a suggestion. If you can
Yeah.
move back just a little bit, I think the top of your face. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So success is about playing to your strengths.
Right.
So success is not about crying that you are not good in some areas, but not boasting also about your strengths. But then
Right.
you have to leverage your strengths, and that
Correct.
is success. If you
Correct.
can do it, if you can master that part, yeah, as Venkatesh is saying, the very first ball, whether you're serving to the backhand or the forehand or the other guy, that will decide your point and the match and the championship and money, and money
Correct.
in trillions of dollars.
Correct.
So these things matter. Yeah. Next
Correct.
slide, please. Yeah.
So before you move there, Doctor, I think this is a good point before we move to the next point. In economics, and I think we discuss this in management as well, you try to figure out your area of competitive advantage and you work to your strength is actually in a manner that working on your weakness is not that easy because you will never be the best in your weakness until you bring it to a strength. Whereas your
Right.
strength can be embellished and can be built and worked upon. To your point, it doesn't mean being lazy or being arrogant. It actually means that you focus your energy on improving your strength and you have
Right.
done something unique that you can actually offer to the world, right? So that
Right.
is why
Right.
quite often it's, you have more success. And in the context of wellness, that's a more pleasurable activity because you get the feedback of seeing your strength increase. Whereas, like you said, you get demoralized if you keep on working only on your weaknesses. I thought I'll just
Right.
add those points. Yeah.
Very true. True. So just as you are supposed to know yourself, you should also know the enemy.
Right.
Otherwise you will be living in a fool's paradise, and your enemy will have overtaken you, like the
Correct.
typical rabbit and that
The tortoise and the hare. Correct.
yeah. So you didn't know the strength or weakness of the enemy, so you kept living in a fool's paradise and you lost the game.
Correct.
So you have to know your enemy and yourself.
Correct.
And this is a key part of it. By yourself, you may be great, but in
Correct.
contrast with your enemy, like the typical Akbar, Birbal drawing the line, you have a line which you think is long and strong, but then
Correct.
someone draws a line longer than yours and you are finished. So you are supposed to know the enemy also. And
Correct.
in fact, equally well.
Correct.
And that is why the training and mental training and physical training matter. Next slide,
Correct.
please. Any comment, Uncle?
No, I think I'll add as we go on. Yes.
Well, talking about strength, there are examples and examples of strengths and weaknesses in our itihasas and Puranas and whatever.
Right.
And the biggest hero of the Krita Yuga and Treta Yuga and Dwapara Yuga and all that was Lord Hanumanji.
Correct.
And Hanumanji was a very ordinary, diffident kind of a self-effacing kind of a guy till he reached the ocean to cross.
Correct.
And once he did that, then it was a whole new ball game for him and ball game for Rama and Krishna and so forth.
Correct.
And that is his strength.
Correct.
He's reaching the ocean by uttering the name of Ram. Was his strength. So he was leveraging it, and he didn't even know that he had so much strength in him. He was surprised when he could jump across the ocean.
Correct.
So that is strength which he leveraged, and he knew his strength. By the time he knew the power of Ramanam, and Ramanama is a source of strength.
Correct.
And he became the chief warrior, Valarasena.
Right.
So again, here, such examples are many. Next slide, please.
I think before we move to SWOT, one good point that comes out of it is that you also just made the point, right? Playing to your strengths doesn't mean becoming lazy or complacent or arrogant. In the same breath, very often your strengths get discovered and get burnished when you have an obstacle, when you have a challenge, and you rise to the challenge, as they call it, and you use your strength, whatever they may be, to do that. And so you are able to do that in a positive way when you leverage your strength. Yeah. Which brings us, of course, to your question about how do we know what our strength is? Please go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So the traditional management style of looking at oneself, in terms of strength, this is here classical or classic SWOT analysis,
Correct.
which is a very ordinary English word, in the abbreviation of the acronym is SWOT, which is strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats. Every one of us has positive things, which in terms of strengths, okay, and negative things in terms of weakness. And weakness is inside you, threat is outside you. And opportunities are outside you, and so forth. You can have the permutations and combinations of these. But SWOT analysis gives you a 360-degree view without the help of a drone. Nowadays, everything is droneized. So a drone will tell you how far you are from your next Vikram Gadga or something. Without knowing that, you enter the ball game and then you try and score something. But you should understand yourself. You should know yourself. And knowing the strength is equally important as knowing your weakness, and vice versa with the opponent. Your opponent may be smarter than you, or he could be just a nobody. And if you know that, the game is yours. You win it, as you will see in a diagram coming up next front. So we have SWOT analysis, and nobody does it. It's the simplest way of analyzing oneself. But people sit and brood and complain and bicker and or boast and go all over the place talking about 56 inches breast, chest, and all that. So people don't do that. How many people really do that? Today, for example, have you done a SWOT? I don't think so. I don't think I did, but I try to do in between, every few days. So I know your SW and OT are not static.
Correct. You have to keep on refreshing and keeping on taking stock. Correct.
Like Heraclitus said, you never cross the same river twice.
As we have discussed, yes.
As Tom Peters said, today's laurels are tomorrow's compost. That was his famous. So today you are great, tomorrow you are nothing. So you should know that. And it's a dynamic thing. And the dynamism of understanding the strengths is very important. Otherwise, you live in yesterday's fool's paradise. And so forth. Next slide, please. So Socrates, another Greek guy, said, know thyself first. First or what? You have to know yourself. Okay. And probably you should do that first.
When we talked about, a few sessions back, if you recall, we had done a session on self-awareness. And in fact, we had touched on this very SWOT topic then as well. And why it is so central to, like you said, it's something that is so simple. It almost has become jargon in the sense of people think it's such a commonplace jargon. But it's one of the most difficult things to do. And if one had to summarize self-awareness in a sentence, it's about doing that SWOT dynamically, like you said, right? You have to keep on doing it to keep assessing where you are. And nobody's box of strengths is empty, right? So you always have raw materials to do stuff with yourself. If you look hard, your S box or your strength box always gives you enough tools to act. And, I guess through this entire series, we have been talking about wellness is about action. So, and it starts with exactly this, as you said, doctor. You have to know yourself. And tough as it is, I guess one of the things that people find daunting about self-awareness is they're very worried that the weaknesses and threats will demoralize them. But I think the interesting part of today's talk is you can do that SWOT with a great focus on simply the S, on the strength, and find enough power to act and move forward. That's a very useful way to do it, right? And make it less intimidating.
Right. Karma. We'll come back to karma again. Action. And you have to personalize.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, today's strength. Today, for example, you may be an okay cricketer.
Correct.
Sachin Tendulkar comes and you are nobody. If you want to have a strategy of competing or putting Sachin Tendulkar in his radar screen, you have to you have to look very hard and you will find something.
Correct.
When you personalize something, either in terms of weakness or strength, you can, in the game of chess, for example, today your pieces may be at a position of advantage. Tomorrow somebody moves the knight and moves the bishop and your world has turned topsy-turvy. So you have to personalize your perception of your issue and then act accordingly. Again, back to karma. Ultimately, all of these will funnel down to karma, action. And personality is absolutely vital. Yeah, any comment, Enku?
No, absolutely. And I think the additional layer in personalization, I think it's a very good point you made. Whether we personalize for other people or not, when we look inside and personalize for ourselves, uh,
Right,
the most important thing is that you always have control over what you do with yourself, right? You may
right,
not know what to do with the environment, but you can control your reaction. Playing to your
right,
strengths always gives you enough, like I said, raw material to do constructive work, to do constructive actions on self improvement. So, looking at your external enemies and all of that is part of what you do to assess your reality. But
right,
when, for example, when you use the cricketing analogy, one is to see where you stand vis-a-vis Tendulkar. But even a Tendulkar may have to one day say, okay, now, I have to retire. And what am I going to
right,
do with myself for the next 20 years? And all of that can only happen by personalizing to one's own situation. And playing to
right,
strengths is one of the best ways to do that. Yes.
right. And build in the dynamism of the situation.
Correct.
Now, knowing that, the next thing is to strategize.
Correct.
Strategize again, going back to the example of chess,
Correct.
Chess, you have to keep strategizing depending on where your opponent is moving his pieces.
Correct.
And if you don't strategize, your knowledge is useless.
Correct.
Your knowledge of your weakness and strengths will be useless unless you build in a paradigm and strategize the whole thing so that you create a position of advantage to yourself, play to your strengths. So
Yeah.
strategizing your life. Again, this again calls for a SWOT analysis, dynamic understanding of the world around you and yourself. And you
Yeah.
keep changing your strategy. And
Correct.
strategizing is the intelligent part. Knowledge is a little bit of a static part. Strategizing is a highly, highly dynamic part.
Correct.
But it is to be done. It's part of your life.
Yeah.
So strategize your life. Is any comment you could? Are you okay with time?
Yeah. I think we are broadly okay with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next slide, please. With all this said and done, somebody may complain, "Oh, life has been bad to me." Many
Yeah.
people say life has been bad to me.
Correct.
And if he's not giving me my due, I am
Correct.
so good, I am so handsome that Hrithik Roshan will put his head into shame. But you may be totally mistaken. Your nose is as crooked as somebody else's. So God has given you a lemon. What do?
Correct.
Then instead of cribbing, you make a lemonade. There is a typical American example of what you do with adversities.
Correct.
And adversity will give you an opportunity. You have to
Correct.
convert every threat into an opportunity. So
Correct.
if a lemon lands on your lap, it is a threat because it is going
Correct.
to destroy you. But then you convert it into a opportunity
Correct.
and you make lemonade. So
Correct.
this requires flexibility and presence of mind.
Right.
Presence of mind. You can't say, tell the lemon, I'll come tomorrow morning and cut you to get juice.
Correct. And I think a very important point in this is, what I think you're saying is, whether you think of this as a threat or a weakness, a lemon is that, right? Lemon is the negative part of your life. But
Right,
depending upon how you look at it, you can take things from your W, from the weakness box, turn them on their head, and they can become part of your strengths, right? Or your
right,
opportunities. And
right,
that very ability is what, pardon me, that very example or that very sort of way of looking at things improves your box of strengths that you can work on, right? That
right.
positive attitude is therefore so important. And why in this series we are calling this positive wellness. If you have a positive, constructive outlook, you can do so much more. Whereas if you keep on looking at it as negatives, you sort of don't have anything to act on.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Here is an example of, how strength or weakness can be turned upside down.
Correct.
Now, here, a typical story, a biblical story of David and Goliath. It's
Correct.
biblical. It's probably, it was probably a real life situation. Biblical
Correct.
doesn't mean that, it is mythology.
Right.
Biblical is not mythology. In that, there is a war between two factions of people around that Mediterranean, Mesopotamian landscape.
Right.
And a powerful demon, Goliath, was
Right.
ruling the roost. He
Correct.
would threaten everybody and he was bullying people, and people were scared of Goliath.
Correct.
So
Because he
they,
was a large guy. He was just a very large size guy. Correct.
yeah, but not much of a head, not much of a brain. But a big guy. Scared. Villagers didn't know how to deal with him, and then he threw a challenge to the villagers. There, you send anybody, I'll finish. You know. So Goliath was boasting, and the villagers didn't know what to do. And then they said, "Okay." David arrived. Then David said, "I will deal with him." People said, "You are such a tiny guy. How will you deal with Goliath so big?" He said, "Give me a chance, I will show it to you." And lo and behold, this fellow, Goliath, had a lot of armor with him, you know. He had weapons and stuff like that. Whereas David had nothing with him except a slingshot. And that shot he used and he leveraged, you know, to hit Goliath at the right sensitive spot on your head. And he fell unconscious. And then it is said that after that, David cut Goliath into pieces and then took the pieces to villagers, etc. And here that is sensationalizing. But here is an example of how David converted a simple down-to-earth slingshot into a lethal weapon. And look at the Goliath, how many weapons he has. You know? And he has all these weapons and everything is brought to naught by David. So, you know, again, the SWOT analysis, convert everything. David was intelligent, that's how he could think of it. You know, Dad was dumb, he was just carrying the weapons. You know? So you can interpret it in any which way you want. And that is part of life. You always have a David and you always have a Goliath. It's a biblical, mythological, whatever story. But is not David for every Goliath, you know.
And I guess each of us, even if we feel we are a David, we have enough things that we can use within our toolkit or within our strengths to tackle any situation, right? Absolutely.
Right.
Which brings us, I guess, to the last slide.
Yeah, every Napoleon has a Waterloo, you know, as they say. Napoleon was invincible till he went to Waterloo, and then he was finished there. So, what is the moral of the story? You know, it's not easy to convert everything, every weakness into faith, into strength. You know, you have to try. You may or may succeed always, but then you need additional adrenaline shot in your system. Yeah, your system is there. You have got triceps and biceps and whatever, but you need an adrenaline shot to activate the whole thing, and that adrenaline shot is faith. Now, David Goliath, the story, going back to that, David invoked the Lord before slinging the shot. So the invocation came in the form of a faith. Now, he believed that he's small and maybe only having a slingshot, but then God is with me. The Israelites, who were the population that time that were attacked by Goliath, you know, he invoked God to gain the faith to beat Goliath. So faith can move mountains. You know, in fact, on faith itself, we can run several series of seminars. What is faith and how does it go, and right up to you know, quantum physics.
Because our very first talk, actually, the very second of these sessions was on faith. Absolutely.
And today we have quantum physics to help you with understanding of faith and so forth. But life keeps happening, happening to you. So that's where we are. So Venkatesh, I hope I could do some justice to the talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, just a small, as we said, you know, we are calling this sort of series now Positive Wellness. We have been setting up for a long while that wellness is about action. And I think you made a few very important points in the last slide as well. We need to activate ourselves, right? We need to, and what is activate? We need to sort of pull everything inside our systems together to act, whether it is on our health, whether it is on our relationships, you know, whatever else it is, like we've been talking over and over. The best thing we can do for our wellness is to act. It's easiest to act on our strengths because we get much more feedback. We get much more benefit from working on our strengths. Faith is an important part of doing that. Introspection to actually understand our strengths is very, very important. And once you do that, and sort of like David, you know, people may not sometimes be comfortable with the use of words like strategize and so on, but they actually come down to this: intelligently use your strengths. There's a lot that you can do, right? And it makes you hopeful, it makes you positive when you set out to do whatever you do every day, is why we had this topic. Yes?
Right. Right. Very good.
Thank
Very
you
good.
so much, Doctor. Look forward to seeing you next week on more of the same. And like we said, we will always have some idea now for the next few weeks. Every week we'll have an idea around what you can do actually to improve your wellness in some action.
Right. Very true. Thank you.
Thank you.